Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Ask an Angel with Jonathan Hung. Here with me today is Ian Chen, CEO and founder of Discotech. Hi, Ian.
Hey, John. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for agreeing to do this. Yeah. Love for everyone to understand your company and talk about Discotech, when it was founded and what you're up to.
Yeah, so Discotech, we started a while back. A company was officially founded, I think, back in 2013, possibly late 2013. And it was originally just the genesis of Discotech kind of came out of the necessity for like myself and my friends out of the customer's perspective. So back then I was in my, call it my mid 20s and working in the private equity industry. And my colleagues and I, we would frequent nightlife venues living here in like Hollywood. And at the time, it was just very hard for us to figure out like what events were happening, how do we get into venues, talking to promoters to get pricing and book tables was very inefficient. It was really non-transparent. And so we were thinking like there has to be an easier way to do this. And so we decided to give it a go and create a mobile app to leverage technology to essentially democratize and like make this process more transparent. And we definitely had some hiccups along the road, but over time we added the ability for our customers to buy tickets, get access to free guest lists, and basically get into clubs, concerts, pool parties, music festivals across different cities.
Wonderful. I love telling everybody, like, I know the biggest party promoter in the United States of America, and he's here with me on my podcast.
Yeah, I think there's probably some truth to that statement. Yeah.
No, it's amazing. And, I think always when you're starting off, building a new team, a new company, it's all about the team. I'd love to hear about your team, you're the co-founders, and, how you built what you built so far since 2013.
Yeah, so honestly, the team, including the founding team, has shifted from the beginning. I mean, we've been at this for a long time. But when we started off with a group of friends. Originally, there were 4 co-founders, myself, my COO, Mark Wu, who's still with us today. And then we had 2 co-CTOs on like the tech side, our tech leads. Those 2 CTOs are no longer with us. They left, like one of them left like a year in, one of them left, I think 2.5, 3 years in. All 4 of us were from UC Berkeley around the same time. And so like we had that like connection. When our first CTO left, we brought in another one also from Berkeley, my buddy. So we really kept it within the network, people that we knew, people that we trusted. And in the beginning, we started off very much bootstrapping. So us founders, we pretty much did everything. And then over time, as we started to get bigger, as we started to get funding, of course, we brought in other people to help us. And the team has continued to, shift and evolve, of course, and, happy to talk more about that later.
Oh, wonderful. So, when you think of your competitors, who are they and what are you doing different than them, or is there something that they're missing, or what's unique about Discotech?
Yeah. So in terms of like where most of the competition lies, it still sits in the hands of individual human promoters. So there are thousands of promoters, tens of thousands of promoters across all the different, cities in America, who might work for like one venue or a handful of venues. And while none of them individually has a lot of traction or market share, as an aggregate, they're still like they're still by far the dominant force. And tech players like Discotech, and then I guess our more comparable competitors, are still working to I guess eat into that pie, which I believe at some point is inevitable. There's going to be a shift to digital, as we've seen in other industries, like travel agents being disrupted by Booking.com and Kayak, restaurant concierges being disrupted by like Yelp and OpenTable and Resi and whatnot. But on the digital side, we did have some large pure play competitors. One on the East Coast named TableList. They had raised like a pretty decent amount of funding, but in terms of like their consumer facing product, it more or less, I think, has been abandoned. They ran into some trouble with Fire Festival, which you can Google, and then also the pandemic was brutal. And so actually much of our digital competition was wiped out because of the pandemic, which shut down our industry for over a year.
Oh, I'm sure. And let's talk about that. 2020 was a rough year. I mean,
Mhm.
I have to give you credit. You know, you as a CEO, I mean, you helped survive the company, right? I mean, I love to for everyone to hear how you did it. Like, what was your pivots? What, you know, because that's what people need to understand. In anything startup, it's not A to Z, right? It's a long and up and down, winding road.
Yeah. And there were some, wines before the pandemic, but certainly we didn't ever expect anything like the pandemic.
Yeah.
It certainly sucker punched us, and there was no forecasting it, right? There's no, hey guys, how do we prepare for something that's going to shut down our industry for
Yeah.
a year plus where revenues go to zero, right?
Yeah.
So there were a lot of things that we had to do, I guess, well, in order to
Hmm.
stay alive. A lot of things had to work in our favor. That's not to say that we got lucky. Of course, this pandemic was probably more damaging to our industry, nightlife and live entertainment, than most, if not any other industries. But a combination of things. So one is that we were able to raise a bridge round from our pre-existing investors, which was pretty critical, like just giving us more cash and runway in the tank. We also took cost cuts very deeply and very early on. So I think the pandemic struck in March, and then by late April or early May, we had laid off somewhere between like 40 to 50% of our workforce. And that was
Hmm.
certainly not easy. We let go people that had been with us for, on the team for years and are like family to us,
Yep.
but, it had to be done. And on the flip side, I don't think there were hard feelings because
Of course.
anyone knows that the reason we were, essentially having furloughs or layoffs was because we're generating $0 of revenue. Like
Right.
our entire industry was completely locked down.
Right.
We got both rounds of PPP. We
Mhm.
applied to and got local grants from like California, from the state of Los Angeles. We were scrappy. One of the
Hey.
most creative things we did was, of the people that remained on the team who are on the marketing and like the
Hmm.
biz dev ops side, there was nothing to do, right? There's no biz dev happening. There's no marketing happening.
Right.
We actually loaned out our employees, who are amazing and loyal and flexible, to
Yeah.
other businesses in exchange for salary
Oh, wow.
to help like cover our costs. Yeah, some of it at like a slight premium. So we really gutted it out. It wasn't easy. The
Hmm.
pandemic lasted way longer than we expected, but we cut costs. We found funding when we needed it. We
Yeah.
took government aid and we loaned people out for revenue. So there's
Oh,
that.
well, that's amazing, Ian. And like, let's
Thank you.
touch on that. You know, funding is always a concern for a startup. I
Mhm.
mean, I have other, founders who told me the best part of them like exiting wasn't just the money that they got. It was
Mhm.
really like, I don't have to fundraise ever again. So, how have you found your investors, and like, how has that been approached before 2020 and nowadays? How's it going for your
You know,
fundraising?
fundraising, I gotta say, has
Hmm.
never been easy for myself or for
Hmm.
Discotech as a whole.
Hmm.
I don't want to make excuses. It is very possible that I'm just not that good at it. With that being said, we have gotten funds when we needed it. I'm
Hmm.
sure someone else probably could have done a better job of it, or a much better job of it. But there were, I guess, historically, there's been a couple things working against us. One
Yeah.
is that I think just the industry that we're in, it's tough.
Yeah.
It just has a bad reputation, right? So
Hmm.
we get a lot of no's
Hmm.
right off the bat, even though people are impressed with the team. We have a really stellar like team that's like coming from outside of nightlife, disrupting nightlife. Um, they just don't like the space. There are so many previous investments in this space, and like all dead bodies or like no winners,
Hmm.
right? So it's a tough space. The margins, the like unit economics in my space aren't really sexy because nightlife venues themselves aren't like super profitable, right?
Right.
It's a really tough industry, very tough game, very competitive. Our partners themselves, have very challenging life cycles. They come in, they come out.
Hmm.
Um, I think that you, you know during this time now with the pandemic, it should go without saying that it
Yeah.
makes it very challenging for us to fundraise. In
Hmm.
2021, as we were coming out of as it looked like we were coming out of the pandemic,
Yep.
we were getting a lot of interest, right? People could see the light at the end of the tunnel. Our stats, Discotech stats and revenue was taking off, and everything was good. Now, of course, Omicron comes, million people are getting it a day. Our industry is taking a huge step back, and investors aren't sure about what the future will look like with the pandemic, if it's going to continue. And so I think there's a lot of, because it creates a lot of uncertainty, it also creates a lot of challenges, on our end, on the fundraising side. And, there's really, to be honest, there's some of these things, there's no answer I can give. I don't know when the pandemic will end, right? I can't actually talk about it, right? So there's some stuff that's out of our control, which makes it challenging. Not an excuse or anything. Yeah.
No, of course. But hey, it's part of the journey. I mean, I always joke with people like, yeah, you were an overnight success. It only happened 8 years for you, right? I mean,
Yeah.
But I think what you've done is great with Discotech. I mean, like you said, you're the open table for nightlife, right? The reservation system for nightlife. And I think no matter what, we're going to get through this, and your company is going to be helping people have fun again. No question.
I think there will be a rebound. Yeah. I think that people are tired of being stuck. There's a human need to be social. I think there's a new generation of like newly minted adults, Gen Z, who have been stuck at home for the last 2 years, who are like very much overdue to like go out, be social, enjoy the summer of love, go to concerts, go to Coachella, all that stuff. So we believe.
No, wonderful. And I loved, because I'd love to hear your journey as a founder, right? But what would you tell someone who's starting out now to bring their vision to life? Like, what's the one advice that you wish you had known earlier, or that you helped you get to this point now?
So I'll start with one thing that I think I did right, and then one big thing that I probably could have done a little bit better on at the time. So going into the idea of Discotech, there was a lot of intrinsic reasons for doing it. Like positive intrinsic things.
Right.
One, I was working with like my very close college buddies. We love each other. We have a lot of trust in each other. I think that's important. Who you're working with and the team and culture you build, very important, right? The mission was something that we were very intrinsically passionate about. We were really big into like going out, clubbing, partying, and the fact that we could just like change this space and help other people party and do it in an industry that like we were very much into was critical to like hanging on when things got tough, because it's like, hey, we're passionate about this. We believe in this. And like, that's really important, because when things are bad, it's easy to try to quit and back out. Well, we didn't necessarily, while we did look into this, what we didn't really consider as much as I think we should have was perhaps unit economics, like the business model. We always knew from the beginning that there was a way to make money. We knew from day one that, by selling tables, by selling tickets, there was commission, but the margins in our space are very low. We typically make around a 10% commission. And that makes it very challenging to, do marketing or affiliate marketing. It just cuts off a lot of like your channels of growth if you're only making a 10% margin. It doesn't give you a lot of wiggle room, right? You can't offer great perks or discounts to your end users. You can't offer a lot to your affiliates because your piece is just so small. And I would advise other entrepreneurs to definitely look into things where, big market, good margins, so that it's much easier to scale.
Got it. Oh, but hey, that's great advice. And, when you're looking for an investor, I mean, what type of investor are you looking for? I mean, obviously some who are hands-on or hands-off, like talk about, like, I know I'm one of your investors, but your other investors who help, like what matters to you? Because not just, I always tell people you shouldn't just take money just because it's money. There has to be more than just money behind getting money from an investor.
So first off, I don't think it's realistic to expect that your investors are going to like work for you, right? Like that's what employees do. They get paid, right? Realistically, an investor, you can leverage them for relationships or like relationships, introductions, or some kind of a strategic move. They're not going to be putting in consistent or significant hours. That's not a reasonable expectation. I would say the best investor has some kind of connection that can either help you with one of your core goals, right? Whether it's growing revenue through like having a relationship with like a vendor, a customer, a supplier, some kind of like some marketing background, right? Something to help you grow. Maybe it's an investor who can help you find other investors, or someone who can help you with the next round of fundraising, right? Like saving you time and energy and helping you raise capital. That is also great, right?
Right.
Maybe it's someone who can just, without having to invest too much of their own time, help you like hire someone, like make less mistakes. It just, something strategic is obviously the best. In my opinion, someone who can help you fundraise and grow revenue, magical.
Hey, wonderful. Here's an interesting question. I'd love to get your perspective on, we're in this space now where Facebook's changed their name to Meta, right? And we're talking about the metaverse and where is that going to take us with Web3? And what do you think the future of nightlife is going to be? Are we going to put on some AR or VR goggles and go to a club? Or, what do you think? How does that affect your industry going forward? How can you use it to your advantage?
Yeah. So I am all for like VR and the Matrix and Ready Player One stuff, and I think in the fairly distant future that will become a lot more common. I think we're a little early on this stuff. I have the I have the Oculus, the new Oculus. So, but I think we're a long ways away from it being very disruptive in our life. And I think one of the last things to truly get disrupted by this technology will be partying with people in real life. Okay. Because there's just so many things about the nightlife and going to the festivals, out being with people, and also potentially, the love aspect and the physical aspect of why people go out to these events that is not ever going to be replaced by this stuff. So I think in our space for a while, we are one of the most secure industries. It's like that and food, right?
Yeah, you can't eat virtual food. Yeah, you have to actually eat.
Yeah, food, having a social life, and the reproductive part around that are like two very core things that like technology is not disrupting.
Well, yeah, but it would be weird, like if like Gen Zs or like now kids getting born now, like they don't want to go party. They just rather go on meet people like online, and just stay home.
Yeah.
It's really interesting because you talk about like how China has like the Zai culture, right? And it's like they're all totally addicted to their games, right? So we'll see. We'll see. But yeah, I agree with you. I mean, but maybe we're too old school. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see, right? And I'd love to ask about I always have to ask my entrepreneurs and founders, what gives you motivation? Are there any books or publication or podcasts that you tell your team to read or follow or get you excited about the industry? How do you keep informed and up to date?
Yeah, I follow a lot. I do follow blogs. I'll listen to podcasts. A lot of the usual people like Peter Thiel. This isn't necessarily related to startups in particular, but what was it? Tools of Titans by, oh my God, Tim Ferriss. But in terms of the motivation, I would say like my team, like the people that I work with, motivate me the most. Like so much of me wanting to succeed is for all of us. Like we've all worked hard. We've all been through a lot, and there's nothing more I would want than for everyone to get like rewarded for like their efforts and their loyalty. I'm doing this for them, and there's so much literature out there to get guidance from. I don't know where to start.
Oh, hey, that's great. And I'm just curious, how do you network with other entrepreneurs? How do you get them? Do you try to find what's going on in your industry? Is there meetups, or are you just totally focused on what you're doing and nobody else matters? I'm curious, because sometimes you got to keep up with the Joneses, or knowing what's happening. How do you figure out what's best for Discotech?
I definitely don't always know what's best. I'm just always trying to do my best. But in terms of networking, I think a lot of it just happens organically. A lot of it happens from common investors, right? Like investors will have like their events where you can go and network with other CEOs. For example, one of our investors is part of like the Draper Venture Network. Like every year they would have this like huge gathering in San Francisco where like hundreds of CEOs get together and talk and change ideas, and they have like breakout sessions. Here in LA, there's the same thing. We have a lot of local, VC investors who will do something on a smaller scale, which is good for networking. And I don't know what it is, but at least in the LA community, they say there's like a Silicon Beach, but the startup community is not massive here. So CEOs kind of stick together and they find a way to like mesh and get introduced to each other. And it's always helpful, right? Because getting fresh ideas, commiserating, right? I think part of it, just like the emotional commiserating of, of the struggles and how hard it is. It's nice to know that you're not alone.
I mean, I'll tell people a real secret. Like most of us fund managers, or angel investors, like some of the best deals we get isn't just we found it. It's we talk to our entrepreneurs like you, who we've already invested, and you tell me who's good and what you're seeing out there. I mean, it's so important. I can't let you go without asking this question. Ian, what's your favorite nightclub? Where do you like to have fun? What's the city that's the best? I mean, hey, you're the CEO of Discotech.
There are so many great ones, and so I can't give one answer. But here in LA, I'm a big fan of Warwick nightclub.
Okay.
Super nice. In Vegas, I still got to go with like the Kings. Excess, Encore Beach Club. I'd say without them, I probably never would have started Discotech. Yeah. I've done my share of clubbing for more than one lifetime, for sure. Fair to say, in every city.
I would think so. No question. Yeah. Well, that's great. Well, thank you, Ian. Hey, please let everyone know where they can find Discotech. And really, hey, last question. Why'd you come up with the name Discotech?
Yeah, so where you can find us, we're free to download on iPhone and Android app stores. We also have a free website that you can go to, app.discotech.me. And the name for Discotech, there were a bunch of names in the running when we started. There was like Nyx, NYX, like the Greek goddess of night, but it was already like a very popular makeup brand. There was a bunch of things in the running. I gotta give credit where it's due. My co-founder Mark came up with this idea, and after we heard it, it was kind of like it was a very like we kind of knew because discoteca, right, or like La Discoteca, it's like club in a ton of countries, European, South American, or meet me at like the discotheque, whatnot. So it's very clear like what we do, and plus we changed it to TECH because we're a tech company, and we're like, this is a winner.
Hey, that's great, wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Ian, for joining us. Are there any other questions you have for me? I always like to make sure that I help any way out, to be helpful.
I know we just talked, but yeah, I mean, we'll be in touch. John, I'm curious the next time when we'll be able to, sit in person again and hang out, grab a bite, grab a drink. And of course, always great to have, your investors also be like people that, support you and like,
absolutely,
are homies with. So thank you, John. I appreciate you having me, and I appreciate your continued support into Discotech.
Great. Thank you so much, Ian. Take care. Thanks, everyone.